Hey guys, I decided to give claymation a try.
What is happening?
Pretty neat, right? Over the last 5 years, I spent way too much time in traffic here in LA. One of the ways that I try to keep myself from going crazy is to come up with cool scenarios and ideas and scenes and stories that I can bring to life through animation. About 2 years ago, I was driving home on a full moon night and I thought to myself, I want to animate a werewolf. I want to do my own transformation. I've always loved werewolves, and every time a new filmmaker put on a big screen a transformation, I would soak up every second of it, frame by frame. The problem with the stop motion transformation is that a typical solid puppet, which is what I normally work with, would not allow the organic transformation, the morphine that needs to take place when a werewolf changes. So that's when I thought, claymation. I'll be able to morph all I want. The organic nature should lead to any kind of changes I'm looking for. The only limits are going to be my imagination.
And you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
Like many ideas you have as an artist, they don't always happen right away. And this one took me 2 years till I finally got my chance to start on this werewolf. At a new studio, it was time to launch. Now I had very little experience in claymation at this point. My first film, Gerald's Last Day, looks like it's claymation, but majority of the characters are made of foam latex. Gerald's face was the only part that was really clay. So there was some minimal shaping and sculpting that was going on. The real experience that I actually had doing full claymation was in a live demo class that I was teaching at Blizzard, which was only about 2 hours of real work with clay before this. So how did I start? Almost like everything I start, it starts on paper. I decided to design a character and I scaled him to about 7 inches tall. I did some posing and simple animation tests in a program called Plastic Animation Paper, just to kind of give me an idea of what I was going to be doing as a simple guide. I got some clay. Van Aken is what I use in a lot of my sculpting projects. It's pretty soft, so I thought it would be good for the morphing that needs to happen in this animation. I decided on the color gray because I thought, with some harsh lighting and shadows, it could look really cool on film. I got some thin aluminum wire that was scaled to my basic 2D drawing. I decided not to go too thick with it because I didn't want to be pushing against it and having it destroy my clay creation too much, but I wanted to have a little bit of structure to it. I pulled out my magic sculpt where I went on top of the wire and created a small bone structure, which would give the clay something to kind of stick to, because I know from other experience that if you're sculpting and you're pushing clay against wire, it'll just spin and twist and rip through. So any structure, like at the chest pieces, the hips, a little bit of a bone in the forearms and stuff like that, it helps support the animation that I'm going to be doing. I also knew that the hands and feet were going to need some stable attachments. I decided to use some T-nuts to support the feet and stay where I want them to stay, and the hands to also anchor to the ground when I needed them to. Basically just create less of a wrestling match once the animation began. Once the skeleton was done, I started adding the basic mass to the body, the chest, the thighs, the shoulders, the arms, all the basic shapes, and then I went in and detailed from there. Sculpting continues as you put the puppet on set. I saved the feet and the hands for actually after I've tied the character down, because clay is so soft and the heat from your hands, the smallest things will deform your character and take him off model. So I end up creating those fine little details at the very end while it's on set. and then I finalized the sculpt. Once the puppet is sculpted and staged, it's time for lights and cameras. Camera set up, light set up, got a nice strong shadow. Lighting was going to be very simple. I was going to have one harsh light with a little bit of back bounce. And the reason for that is because I wanted the shadows to be part of telling the story. And a real lighting person would want to see it in every pose that's going to happen during an animation. And I had a kind of basic idea, but I also know how organic animation is, so I was just hoping for the best. I set up a nice wide shot with a 50mm lens, and basically I just wanted enough to see full body acting and leave a little bit of room for me to composite the moon in at the end. Okay, here comes all the excitement and the anxiety of knowing what I have up here in my imagination is absolutely not going to happen in stop motion animation. And that's part of the thrill, right? Is like, I know the clay might take me in a different direction, or, you know, puppet limitations, or a new idea because this animation is going to take me 2 weeks to create. Whatever that is, it's the thrill of improvisation, and I'm here to do it. Let's get to work. Night one went pretty well. I did realize that the clay wants to squish really badly under the warm lights. So this is definitely making subtle things really, really challenging. But I accomplished about 45 frames. Night two, the tummy ache. This is really exciting because everything's been little tiny little movements thus far. And this is he's feeling the pains of change happening and the contraction, and I'm actually going to have some movement in the character that's readable and the real first magic and life that this character is going to take. Night three, he's going to go down. He's going to hit the ground with some impact, and I really want to feel that force. I'm running into some real limitations now with the rig, the armature that I created. I'm not able to get the kind of drag I want in his head as he's falling down because it completely destroys the face anytime I grab the head. So I'm really struggling now in how I'm going to get the dynamic movement that I want moving forward. Night four, he's down. I take Magic Sculpt and I create a bunch of fingernails. And what I do is I shove them inside of the hand fingers, clay, and then I just slowly pull them out to give the illusion of growth. I'm struggling with the toe, the back toe bend, and this is minor stuff, but if it doesn't bend naturally, to me it looks goofy. So I'm having to do some little tricks here and there to make that work. I'm thinking about clean poses, clean arcs, weight, timing, spacing. All of this is in my mind as I'm working. Night five, I'm entering the hair phase. I honestly had no idea how I was going to do this when I started. And it's one of those things that I've done many times. I've just figured it out on set. I started by laying down some little worms of clay that you just lay like a little kid on the back, using my sculpting tools to just kind of brush in a little bit of texture as the hair starts to grow. Night six, structural changes to my character. Okay, so clay morphs really well, but when you're using an underlying skeleton, I started with a very normal sized neck on my character with a little bit of a skull in there so I'd have something to move around. I had an idea that I would, extend the neck somehow, but I didn't know how. What I ended up doing is just clicking the head off and wrapping on some new wire and then drawing a slightly longer skull. And what I did is I corkscrewed the wire so that when I squished it back down and started sculpting on top of it again, I was able to slowly pull it to its full length of the neck throughout the morph. And it created an awesome illusion. So I was really happy to see it work. Timing and spacing is the essence of what makes animation magical. And what I tried to do in this animation is also an animator's trick, which is if you're doing big changes, you can hide it in between fast movements. So I decided throughout feeling this animation that in a couple of moments when the character is moving or whipping, that's when I would do big structural changes like the leg changing, like the foot stomp, hitting the ground. That's when I chop it off and create a new leg, which I grow into a dog's leg. And then a big arch would be another opportunity where I can hide the back humanoid leg and shift it into another dog leg. So using those little bits of spacing and timing allows you tons of magic, but also adds as a cloak to big changes you want to hide throughout animation. Night 9, I finally reach my howl pose. This is the one pose that I knew was going to be in this animation. The final row! And I ended up making some Magisculpt jaws and teeth. Again, it's an awesome structure that hardens like rock. And then as the mouth would create the ooh shape, I would pull out the teeth and just structurally sculpt the lips going over them a little bit and put them back in. At this point too, the puppet was freaking heavy, way too heavy for the structure that it started with, that little thin wire. So I ended up having to support it with all kinds of little silly, thin wire things and rigs and whatever I could to get to that final bit of animation. But the hot lights and the soft clay were not friends. That's it. I did it. I did a werewolf transformation, and it actually came out pretty freaking magical. The thrill of improvisation while you're animating in stop motion, and the thrill of possible complete failure, which can happen at any turn, at any evening while you're animating, is quite exciting. What did I learn? Claymation's freaking hard. It's really hard. So props to all you guys out there that do claymation. I prefer puppets that stay in place and I can wrestle and make them do what I want to do. But it has a very special place in animation, period. So I'm really excited about seeing what you guys do. And I think it's a great place to start for first-time animators. I would love to see anyone out there who's interested in doing a morph. One of the cool exercises I give students is just changing from one thing to another thing. A rabbit to a camel, a dragon to a butterfly, whatever it's going to be. I think there's some really cool stuff you can do there. And clay is limitless, so give it a shot. And if you do, make sure you share it with me. Please like and subscribe.